Hello and welcome to the next in our series of studies from Carter's Lane Baptist Church. My name's Shaw Coleman, I'm the minister of the church, and over the last few weeks we've been doing a study which I've called Marching On, particularly about the saints marching on. We've been looking at a whole series of them over the last few weeks, as I say, including Julian of Norwich, Martin Luther, John Wesley, Elizabeth Fry, Mother Teresa, all from this little book. And today we're moving on to this chap here, Martin Luther King Jr., who was an extraordinary man for all sorts of reasons. I can't possibly do justice to everything that he achieved, but I do want, through the use of some video clips, and we'll ask what his legacy was. And I think it can be summed up actually quite simply, but in a way that's incredibly challenging for us all. One of the key events in the civil rights process was in 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat for a white person on a bus. She was tired, but segregation was the rule that said she should. In refusing, the police were called, she was arrested, and that began the bus boycott. For copyright reasons, a link has been supplied for you to see a very clever little presentation of what happened. It's done as a musical. It is funny, but many a true word is spoken in jest. So at this point, I suggest that you stop watching this and have a look at the link and then return to this. When the bus boycott started, they all met and, vented their anger at the Baptist church where Martin Luther King was the pastor. And that was probably one of the key points for him. He had been involved in a lot of the calls for reform before then, but this was when he came very much onto the map. It was to be a challenging time, not least because he was up against the white supremacy type individuals, but also an institution which did not understand the problems that they were facing. It was to lead to him being arrested 19 times and frequently find himself in prison. Rosa Parks was a skilled seamstress and worked in a department store, and she would have seen the segregation there, because if a white child came in to buy some shoes, well, they'd try them on, see which fitted. If a black child came in, you drew round their feet and then you put a shoe on top of it to see if that would be the right size. There were so many different ways, the Jim Crow laws, that made white people superior to black. Indeed, one of Martin Luther King's early quotes, "The finest Negro is at the mercy of the meanest white man." There were several successful standoffs in the bus boycott, and although it lasted 385 days, segregation was outlawed in Alabama, but it wasn't to be outlawed in other states for many years. Indeed, the FBI targeted Martin Luther King's actions. They suspected him of communist ties. They looked at extramarital liaisons, and they did find some. He was also mailed a threatening anonymous letter which he interpreted as an attempt to encourage him to commit suicide. He was a Baptist minister, and he'd been trained in various colleges, but he'd done very well. He went on to get a PhD, in fact. But he was very aware that the gospel of Jesus Christ was about justice for all, and consequently he was very concerned to preach this message. As a youngster, he and his teacher went to a particular congress by bus to Georgia, and because they were black, they were made to stand all the way. When he was working in the integrated North, he was impressed by the difference between what happened in the north of America, where integration existed, and his own experience of the segregated South. All of this led him to develop his theory of civil disobedience, inspired by the teaching of Jesus, but inspired too by Gandhi. He contrasted civil disobedience, for example, the Boston Tea Party was a civil disobedience, with what Hitler had been doing in World War II, which was legal, because the rules in Germany let Hitler do what he did. The restaurant sit-ins, when blacks were banned from restaurants, became a real cause célèbre, and King was arrested and imprisoned and only released because of John F. Kennedy's intervention. He was actually arrested later in Albany in 1961, and it's possible that Billy Graham may have paid the fine to get him out. He was arrested in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, and that's when police tactics against the protesters were shown on TV, particularly the excessive use of water cannon and the use of dogs. And the nation was starting to think there is something wrong going on here. And so it is that we come to that speech, that march of what turned out to be 250,000 people to that extraordinary day, and the story about a dream. Again, this video is available on YouTube, but here's a clip for you to see.
I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
That was August 1963. And over the next few years he continued, facing a lot of opposition. Often his marches were attacked, there would be firecrackers or worse set off, and in the end he was to be assassinated for his beliefs. I want to end the series of clips with this, his final speech, very prophetic, and afterwards, very briefly, to reflect on the legacy that we now have inherited and must seize.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
There were riots after his assassination. And maybe the Black Lives Matter movement suggests that there is still much to be done. But I did say that there were two simple parts to the legacy, which are very challenging. And that legacy, I think, can be summed up, for me, like this. Firstly, that everybody is the same. Everybody matters. And secondly, that if we're going to seek justice, justice is a difficult road to travel and can be costly and needs sacrifice. What a man. I'm sure that there is so much more that I could have covered, but we have so little time. But please do find a little bit of time to do some research. There's some lovely stuff on YouTube that will help. In the meantime, you take care of yourselves. Look after each other as well. God bless you. Bye-bye now.